Everybody, this is On coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video where we look at um, things that are ready to happen in our world, what's coming up from an energetic aspect. I am the author of The Code Journey, which is this book right here. And every year I put out a new edition. I'm currently working on the 2026 edition. But if you'd like to check out this work more because you say, hey, this is kind of interesting information, or, I'd like to know what's coming up, what to be prepared for, how to work with foresight. And you could do that just by going over to my website, compassioncodes.com. Click on the goods tab, you'll see the code journey, and then you can pull that up, and it's got direct links for you to the different purchase pages there. So with this video, what we're doing is we're looking at world events. We're looking at what can be coming up in the upcoming months. So this is going to be for April 2025, things that we can expect to be happening, things that are likely to surface at this time. And what I do is I look at things from what's called a code perspective, or the energetic patterns that are present. Those are influences that we're not going to change. Those influences are there whether we like it or not. They're going to be there. It's kind of like the weather is going to do what the weather's going to do, whether we like it or not. So we're not going to necessarily make that change now. We won't get into the fact that some people can shift the weather with their mind and things like that, but energetic currents are present, and it's really just a matter of, are we going to work with those currents, or how do we work with those currents along the way? And when we understand what the currents are, we can move forward with foresight. So that means we can make wiser choices. That means that we can understand things that are going on, not be caught off guard by things. And keep in mind that these influences that I'm talking about now in this video, I actually wrote like a year ago. So, this work is put out long before things are happening. So I don't know exactly, how they're going to play out, but they always coordinate. They always coordinate. And, I always say, beware of those people who are giving you like specific times, dates and times, because most people, when they're actually doing something, if we look at world leaders, they're not going to give you dates and exact dates and times. They may for signing an executive order or putting, something through, or something like that, but they're not like telling their strategies and their plans, saying, oh, we're going to go bomb this place on a certain date at a certain time. No, you would never do that, out there. So be really careful of the people that do that, I say. But, what we can do is we can start to put together some of the pieces and realize, oh, okay, we might be in for certain types of things happening. Again, it's, we can hone in with the energetic currents, probabilities for things to come up, or things that might be pushed in narratives, because this is kind of a geopolitical sort of video. And we can be prepared for those things coming up. So if we know, okay, our health is going to be more vulnerable, we can boost our health and maybe not get caught in certain things. Oh, they're going to try to do, division tactics. So if we know that ahead of time, then we can come through and go, okay, we don't have to play this game. We can be ready to bring the facts out on things. We can be ready to go with different things. And just again, that heads up the general areas, which areas are going to come into the spotlight during certain time frames. Again, I don't get into specific dates or times because that's not really the way energy works. It's kind of like seasons or plants or things like that. It's a little more organic in nature to a certain extent. The plants don't say, I'm going to blossom on this exact date at this time. No, they're like, okay, I'm waiting for the sun to give me the clue that we're not going to get cold again if I come out and start blossoming. And that's kind of the same way energetic patterns are. It's like, okay, when these certain things happen, when certain influences are present, when the conditions are right, then certain things can happen. So same kind of concept in there. And I always find it interesting when I write these things, a year ago, and then we get up closer to the time and it's like, oh, wow, this is really happening. And this book is not all geopolitical. By the way, I want to mention that it does have a spiritual foundation to it, and it is a personal growth tool. But I do address some factors that can play into things that connect for world events as well. So that's kind of an interesting piece. So it's this aspect of here's the currents, you decide how you're going to work with it. That's the way that tool is designed. So let's get on into our information for April 2025 and take a look at what we have going on. April is a little bit lighter month than some of the other months we've already had this year or that we'll have coming up. There's sometimes, when we're looking at the codes, we may see certain things that are repeating from March. We may see certain things that are different, certain things that come into a stronger highlight. So all of these different components. Now, looking at the overall month for April, big piece that we have right now is deception coming out of spiritual leaders and prophets. So, this is going to put our spiritual groupings, whether we're talking Galactic Federation could be in there even, because they have a lot of connections with other things. They oftentimes will connect in with intel communities, which let's face it, and their religious leaders will come into the spotlight. We have a lot of people out there saying that they are prophets of God, and this is what God's telling them, and then they're claiming that it's intel stuff. And so we have to be very careful of this, because what's happening is there's a lot of people coming out claiming to be prophets and spiritual leaders and healers and all of these things and agents of God, and they're not. They really aren't. They're really just putting forth, in essence, propaganda. We need to keep in mind that most of the intel community is using the same tactics as the corruption. They're really not a lot different when you get down to the core basics of them, and they're really doing a lot of psyop type of stuff. And what we're going to see in April is a lot of spiritual leaders being rolled out to the front. So, we might even see some spiritual leaders we haven't seen for a while. You might see Deepak Chopra come, front and center. You may start hearing from Marianne Williamson again. We may see from some of the Southern Hemisphere groups that are, down in South America and stuff, where they do the Machu Picchu areas and things like that, the groups that are connected to that. A lot of the people that maybe were big back in the 80s in the spiritual movement, or even the 70s, we may see some of them coming back up again. But there will also be new people, like I said, priests, ministers, people like that, again, people are prone to trust. And why are they going to these people? Because as a general rule of thumb, people believe that they can trust them. And so they're perceived as more trustworthy. It doesn't mean that they always are, but they're perceived that way. So we've really got to be a bit careful as we start to look at these communities, as we see these people come out, because again, this is like the great deception. It's like, well, certainly the spiritual community wouldn't deceive us. Certainly, people wouldn't claim to, or be wearing all kinds of crystals and different things, and then, be of different ministerial practices and stuff, and then be lying to us. Well, unfortunately, yeah, there's actually a lot of that out there. It's like, even if you take a look at readers, the people that do tarot cards or different things like that, and you see more in that coming in to be an excuse to share intel. It's like a cover for sharing intel, and those people are really being paid by the intel community. And it's really about the money. Most of those people, if they weren't making money, they wouldn't be in that. They wouldn't be saying anything at all in there. So we really have to be careful of that, because a lot of the people that people are listening to these days have these big followings, and a lot of these big followings are bringing in a lot of money for these people. So they're going to get up there and they're going to say whatever. If somebody comes to you and say, hey, I want to do this paid ad with you, I just need it to seem like it's a normal recommendation from you, then they're going to do it. I mean, that's kind of how it's working these days. And I know people don't like to think that because they want to think, oh, I can trust so and so, I can trust this person, I can trust that person because they're on this platform, or they're, or they're, supporting certain things or whatever, but they're part of the parallel economy or things like that. But they're doing the same things. A lot of them are doing exactly the same things. And again, a lot of them would not be speaking up if they weren't, honestly. So we got to be very careful about this because, again, they're using these people because people perceive them as being trustworthy. They perceive them as people they can be honest about. But I'll tell you, about half of these people are lying. If you go into like tarot card readers and stuff like that, half of those people are at best 50% correct. You have some gifted people that know how to connect the pieces. And I know a couple of them, but there's a lot of them out there. They are not. They are not that. It's just about the money for them. Or they think, well, I want to be whatever. And then they put themselves out there. They know how to market well. And a lot of these false spiritual leaders and prophets, they're usually marketed pretty well. Like you'll see their name popping up everywhere, and they're connected with these circles, and everybody in that circle or that grouping will promote them. And this is part of what I warn people, in the spiritual community, because you see the exact same thing. All the things that they complain about the corrupt doing, they're doing. So they complain about the corrupt all promoting each other. Well, they're all promoting each other. So, we have to look at some of these things and say, well, if it's right for the people that we want to believe, why is it wrong for the other people? They're just utilizing resources in the end. But here again, just because they're not part of the corruption, in some ways they are, because they're working under all of this deception in there. So we got to be very, very careful of these spiritual leaders. They're going to come into the spotlight. They're going to be used a lot. And we just really want to keep our guard up and not be deceived by them. My rule of thumb is if they're going on Oprah, if they're going on morning shows, if they're going on a lot of these bigger platforms, if you're seeing them plastered everywhere, they're probably false. Really use your discretion and figure it out. There's a few people out there that have gotten pretty big and they're not false in the self-help industry, but there's pretty few of them. There are very, very few of them out there. Also, what we're seeing in this month, a big piece that's going to probably come back to bite some people, so to say, is this lack of patience. This is absolutely huge when we look at geopolitical stuff, and lack of patience that brings power moves and battles on there. And this is going to bring up a lot of hate on those that don't submit to those that are in positions of power, world leaders, things like that. And it's like, okay, if you don't want to submit, we're going to send people out that are going to hate on you. Well, what have we seen recently that would be an example of this? Recently, where we've seen them doing the raids on certain people in the truther communities out there. And Sean Faresh was one of them that came up recently. And so those sorts of things, these false calling in of stuff, because they're not going along with certain things, they're not complying. I've also seen some other calls for hate out there to hate on these people who are not submitting. Matter of fact, Chuck Schumer just did that recently. He just, this is what, the 22nd of March, so just in the last day here or so, and he was saying, if you don't go with us on things, we're going to come after you. So if you don't agree with us, if you don't comply, basically is what he said, we are going to attack you. Kind of sounds like a threat to me. And so when we start to look at these things, this is the type of thing we're going to be seeing come up more of throughout all of April in there. And what we want to keep in mind with this, though, is because they're going to be stirring up these emotions in people. And this is going to lead to dictatorial leaders making mistakes or being exposed, because this lack of patience is going to get the best of them. They don't want to wait on things. They don't want to have the patience to see things through in the timing that they need to be sent through. They're getting scared about things, stuff like that. And that's going to lead them to take actions that are not going to work out well for them in the end. But what we want to keep in mind here is when the power sources become impatient and they start pushing things and they start pressuring people, they're also dividing people. But, when you get down to it, look around your towns. Is it the common people around your town that is really battling with each other? Are they the ones that are trying to go to war? No, and I think we can say that in most every country, in most places around the world. It's not the people who want to be in battle. They don't want to be in battle. They kind of get pushed and shoved into it and forced into it because they get recruited or whatever else, drafted, whatever else, along the way to go fight these battles. But we want to keep in mind that the battles are battles of the elite, battles of the wealthy people. It's their battles, right? The battles are between world leaders, oftentimes over wealth, oftentimes over, not agreeing with each other. So there's definitely these different components in there that we want to keep in mind. That a lot of times for the most part, we've been drugged now into their battles, right? You see it all over social media. Oh, you got to stand on this side. Oh, you got to get into the battle. You got to do this. You got to do that. Again, look around your communities. How many people are like truly at war with each other? Not very many. Yeah, they've got differences of opinions. Again, they've been provoked into these battles, but they really don't. So we can look for some of those mistakes to bring down some of these dictatorial leaders. It's going to bring them down. And then what we want to do is really look at discernment. I like to say, in this month, really discernment is a form of protection for us. And this is going to be a big thing because the more we can learn to discern, and it just takes practice. It's just like learning to discern what is a real video versus an AI created video. There's some very good AI created stuff out there, and it's very hard to tell whether it's AI or whether it's real, the way people are putting it together now. So discernment, I say, really keep practicing that. Just keep practicing over and over and over again on it, because the deception is going to get harder and harder to notice as they refine things. And we need to stay on top of that discernment. So if we're not getting to the truth, we're going to be pulled into these battles. We're going to be pulled down these cycles. We're going to be taken in by the false prophets and the false leaders out there. And we just don't really want to do that. So discernment becomes our protection. So I really encourage you to work on refining that a lot. And as I always say, go look at the facts for yourself. Don't just trust these people that are, having their programs out there, putting information out. Go out and actually look up the documentations yourself, because everybody on both sides are skewing the information to make it look the way that they want it to look. It's just like I listen to a couple of people, and all the time they're like, oh, gas is down to these prices. It's only, X amount, per dollar. Well, guess what? It has not gone down that much where I live. I think we've gone down like 20 cents a gallon. We haven't dropped by $1 a gallon like they're claiming, or, more in some places like they're claiming. We haven't seen that where I live in Maine anyways. So, I have to look at those people and I have to go, yeah, well, you're kind of trying to gaslight me here. Yeah, you might claim to be a freedom fighter, but you're still gaslighting me. So again, we have to look at it and say, yeah, I like to believe this person, but maybe I need to go look it up. I see this a lot, with the population thing, where they say, oh, our birth rates are just dropping off. We've got to populate people so much more on the earth. And, when you really look at it and you get down and look at the actual statistics, yeah, there are some birth rates that are going down, but the population is still going up. Okay. And that is something that people are missing. We're still increasing in population at quite a rapid rate, actually. So again, you got to see through some of this stuff to really get into the truth. Now, the 1st through the 19th, people must be put above profit. That is what the codes are warning us of. Okay. People need to go above profit. And this is a big thing. So we're one way, how do we discern people? Well, who's putting people first and who's putting profit first? That's one way to take a look at it and say, how do I discern who's who? Um, During this time, though, what we may see is those leaders that are working to the benefit of the people who are putting people first, they're going to put an emphasis on taking care of needs. So that's really optimistic for any place that has those kind of leaders in place. Because we will see like the cost of food coming down in April. We will see the cost of gas coming down in April, most likely, in those areas. And those who are in need, who are those? Our seniors, our vets, are people on the Social Security, people who are disabled, genuinely cannot work. There's serious issues. I don't mean the freeloaders on the system in there. So we are actually going to see probably hear more about funds going in their direction. How do we take care of these basic needs? How do we get people to where, yes, they can actually afford a place to live? They can actually buy food for themselves and things like that. So I think we're going to see a lot of things happening that are going to make it easier for people to meet their basic needs coming through. So that to me is really promising in there. Of course, if people are putting profits first, they're not going to be taking care of those things. So again, this is part of how you discern. Are they taking care of these things for people? Or are they not taking care of these things for people? When we look at this component, we have an aspect where we have needs will move us into abundance. So if we take care of the needs of the population, that will move us into abundance. When people are living in an abundant mindset, the stress is coming off, the anxiety is coming off, they're not worried about things. They're like, hey, I can take care of my basic needs. Therefore, I now have a little bit to share with other people as well. I can help this person who's in need. We can do something to help the people in our community that are struggling, things like that. So we come into this abundance mindset. And of course, when we're in an abundance mindset, we're going to generate more abundance in there and more successes in there. But also part of the abundance mindset is to clear the excess, to clear away those who are taking advantage of the system. So those people who maybe are claiming to be disabled, but they're not disabled in there. And we know, at least in the past, there's been a lot of scams around that. So we may have a lot of stuff that comes up talking about people scamming the system, which interferes with abundance energy. Then from the abundance piece, we go into interconnection. And with interconnection, what happens is when people feel abundant, they naturally connect more with that soul energy, with God, with divine source. They come into connection with that. And, whether that's through a religious foundation, a belief system, a spiritual practice, whatever it is, they come into that interconnection. And when people come into that interconnection, their mind becomes a lot clearer about things. Their mind is able to see things with greater clarity. They can't be taken advantage of as easily. They feel stronger personally. So it's harder to sway them. It's harder to get them to believe lies and brainwashing and programming and things like that. So you're actually strengthening the individual. And that's what needs to happen, because the stronger people are, the more they can take hold on their own. So it's this kind of constant cycle going on in there. And when people have that strong interconnection going on, they will become more responsible. They'll handle their responsibilities instead of going, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit back and be lazy and let everybody pay for everything for me. So, we have to keep in mind that Yes, we have people taking advantage of the system, and those are the people we need to move out of the system. But we also have people who are genuinely in need of things. So we don't want to just wipe everything out because, like seniors and people on fixed income, they rely on the food banks to be able to eat. They rely on these things, they rely on these programs. So, and it's not that they're bad people or, that they're living extravagant lives or anything like that. It's just the expenses, things have gotten to a point where what they get doesn't cover the expenses for them. And, that's so they need some help in there. So again, we want to look at, who is doing this. And if we are paying attention to people's needs, and if leaders are taking care of that, it will give people the strength to, again, take hold and do more for themselves in there. We reduce disease that way too, right? Because when people aren't stressed, when they're not worrying, when they're not concerned about getting those basic needs met, they can actually ease up, and then their body is not taking on illness as easily either. So this has, when we come down to it, it's like, yeah, we really need to focus on taking care of people's basic needs. We need to focus on that basic cost of living coming down. We need to get things affordable for people. We need to get them enough money to take care of the basics. So with that as a big focus, that's going to, again, tell us a big idea of who's sitting where with things. Now, the biggest responsibility that we have right now is peace. And peace comes from having command over our life and very little government control. This is going to be a huge thing for people. So we really have to put the emphasis on that. That's like the number one thing in April. So again, let's look at those leaders. Who are the leaders who are supporting peace, bringing forward peace, trying to create peace out there? And this is going to be important. And I think about this and I think, well, who knows? Let's watch what happens in Russia and Ukraine right now, because they're really struggling to find that peace agreement in there. So let's see what happens. Can it be obtained? Are they going to put an emphasis? And likewise, when we have an influence like this, we will see those people who are unwilling to have peace in their countries or their communities or wherever in there. So we really want to look at that. And this comes back to taking care of those needs, right? Because if we can get people in command of their life instead of dependent on all kinds of government programs, then their whole sense of value, self-worth, everything blossoms in a way that works well. And so if we can take care of their basic needs, they're going to have that peace as well within them. And that, again, it stimulates this whole cascading set of response. So there are certain leaders out there who have the ability and the foresight to recognize, yeah, we need to take care of these certain things. Yes, peace is a number one priority in our world, because without that, we can't get people where we need to get them. Likewise, we got to get people where we need to get them in order to generate more peace in there. So lots of different components that are coming up with this. And what we may have in April is we very well could have an uprising happening this, first through the 19th, if rights are taken away or freedoms are removed. So again, if we're watching those dictatorial countries, and let's say like in the UK, they take away more rights. They've been taking away a lot of rights over there. And, God help them that they get to the election, they can make some changes over there. But also, look at other countries, even Canada. Canada has been kind of silent for, they've been just under the radar a little bit. But look at these countries who have been taking away rights. And that's going to also just really bring up more stuff that we're probably going to see uprisings in those areas. Every time a right is taken away, Australia is another country that has a lot that goes on with it, where they've removed a lot of rights of just deeming certain things hate speech or whatever, because again, it's about controlling people. So again, if we can get some of the government control out and let people live their lives, a lot of people are going to do a lot better. And our systems will actually be a lot better as a result of it. We also have coming up during this time weather unpredictability, so we can expect stuff to kick up. Could some of it be like weather manipulation? Yeah, some of it could be. Some of it's just going to be plain old weather happening. Some of it's going to be balancing as a result of weather manipulation. So we could see a variety of things happening during those first 3 weeks. What I would say is just have some backups on hand. Think of things that don't have to be refrigerated. Have your backups for power if you need that. Have evacuation plans in place. It never hurts to have these things in place. Sometimes you put them in place and then thank God you never have to use them, right? But if you don't have them in place and then you need them, well, that sucks. That sucks because then you're trying to figure things out in the moment. And this is not going to be the best month to be figuring things out in the moment. So, again, I think back to the days that like in the 70s and stuff like that, even the 60s, right? And you had fire escape plans. So it's like everybody in the house knew, okay, if a fire breaks out, here's where you go, here's how you get out of the building, this type of thing. And that's the same kind of concept. It's not about living in fear. It's just a aspect so you know what to do if something happens. It's preventative. It's like taking preventative medicine or taking care of your health so you don't get sick. It's the same thing. You're not living in fear of getting sick. You just do the things that keep your body from doing that. So it's the same concept with the weather. Take the time to have those plans. But we could see some major devastation come through from storms during that time. Now I think of some of it, where could it be? Again, is it weather manipulation or not? Well, it could be, if you see a huge amount of rainfall all of the sudden coming through. And then if you combine that in an area like where I am, which is a, big skiing area, and you have snow melt coming down off the mountains and you've got that rain going, well, that can create some flooding and that can create some devastation that goes on. So we just have to be alert and aware and say, okay, if things get to this point, here's where we're going to go, here's where we're going to head. Or, maybe what we'll do is, you can't run away from every storm. People in the South know that very, very well. It's like, we'll just hang tight in here. But you have to know when you do need to get out. And if you're going to get out and you have that chance of devastation in your area, what are you going to take with you? Because you're certainly not going to drop your whole house into your vehicle. So again, just a little bit of preparation, I think, is a wise thing, and not taking chances with storms. Anytime we have these unpredictable weather patterns that are going to come through, then we need to take a look at that and say, okay, I need to get home before the storm. Yes, they can change very suddenly, which means I shouldn't be leaving at the very last minute to get home safely. This means that if I'm going to go out and do things, I need to remain close enough to areas that I can get to safety if I need to. If I'm going to go hike in the woods and there's a flood possibility, then where's my high ground? Can I get to safety? How far away am I from my car? Different things like this that we want to be alert to. What would I do if this happened? And again, not being in the fear, but being prepared. And there is a difference between them. Now, from the 20th through the end of the month and the general month influences, what we have is a big emphasis on partnerships and connections coming out. So what we're going to be realizing, what's going to come to the surface, is we're going to be shown a lot more about how connections are used to implement agendas. So particularly why how activist groups and things like that are being used to implement different agendas. This is part of why a lot of this funding has been getting cut off, because like the USAID funding and things like that, because it cuts off some of the wealthy elite people who are funding the activists to go out and implement these different agendas or false flags or events, so to say, to stir up trouble. So that's why those funds have been very, very important to cut off. Now, we just had coming out in the last day or two, there's been some of that starting to come to the surface already. And we've started to see where Soros was paying activist groups and connections to go out and do to set fire to the Teslas. And Soros may have his beef with Elon, and I'm not saying Elon's perfect or anything like that. There are certainly things about Elon I don't really care for, I don't agree with personally. Um, but I don't need to go destroy everything about him. Now, who knows? We have to kind of sit back and say, is this all some big grand illusion stage thing that they're doing? I mean, you look at that, right? When you look at Walmart's and Targets, when they were always the stores that were being raided, not other stores necessarily, because they were connected in, like Target's connected into Obama. Obama has connections into there. And so, they were all being paid back, a lot of them, for what they were losing. So they were funding the people to go in and do the activist and tear things apart and steal things. And then they were funding the stores to be reimbursed for the losses. And that was coming out of our taxpayer money because it was coming out of these different avenues like USAID, that then went into these elite hands that then funded all of this. So in essence, it was our taxpayer money paying for all of that. And the same thing is happening with these activist groups, which is why, again, they're trying to pare down where this funding is going to and things. But we're going to see more of that connection coming out and seeing that called out in things. We're also going to see a big contrast coming up between abundance and materialism. And they really are different things because abundance is really set into helping people in need. Materialism is really more of a greed factor in there, hoarding money, things like that. And a lot of people, when they hear abundance, they think, oh, like a windfall or, money is flowing and they associate it with money, but it isn't necessarily associated with money. It's associated with taking care of people's needs. It's associated with realizing that even if I don't have very much, I have a little something to share with people in there. So we're going to see some contrast and differences coming up in those arenas as well. Balance and harmonizing is the key to peace. So this is kind of telling us that no one is going to get everything that they want. If we're talking peace deals, if we're talking, settling things down, finding common ground, finding, getting to this space where we can harmonize. I mean, each person has to be able to be who they are. It's like each leader has to be able to run their country. But those leaders need to harmonize with other leaders as well, or their country is going to, fall, basically. So there's these components, and that balance and that harmony is going to be the key. So when we start to see some of these deals and these connections come up and these partnerships come up and things like that, we don't want to get overly panicked, because what's happening with some of this is there are going to have to be deals that need to be made in order to keep peace. And that's going to be a priority. And what is that about? That's not about backing down or showing weakness necessarily. That is about, hey, we really don't want to enter World War III. We don't want to go to a nuclear war. Some basic things like that. So it's much better if we can just say, okay, we'll give you this if you'll give us that, and find our balancing points in things and hold the peace. So hopefully that's more of what we're going to see. Now, really strong leaders are going to be those leaders, of course, that are helping people to be self-sufficient, that are getting them, again, off of the systems where they can take care of themselves, not just taking them, booting them off of the system and saying, we're not going to give you anything, but making the shifts and the changes that will allow people to take care of themselves instead of having to rely on so much. So I think, again, we're going to see a lot of things coming up that are going to help people meet their needs in things. I think that's a really big piece. And the leaders that can do this, the true, sincere leaders that are working to benefit people are going to be favored in this time. So kind of look at who's got their flow, who is finding things moving reasonably well and who doesn't. That's going to tell us a lot in there. Now, in the action area, which is, our activities, our physical steps, the things that are going to go into motion, from the 1st through the 18th, that is magnifying our need for peace. So we can see things ramp up a little bit, right? That's sometimes where it can get a little scary, and we have to get pushed into those scary spots sometimes before people are willing to accept peace. So sometimes we'll see things ramp up in there. I wouldn't worry about them again. I think more and more people are going to come into that awareness. Yes, this is why Trump and some other people are saying we have to have peace in these areas. In order to move forward, we're going to have peace in certain areas. And this is going to magnify the need to give peace to people. So people, again, they have to feel that interconnection. They have to feel peace within them in order to get off of some of these systems. They have to feel like they can take care of themselves. If they don't have that peace within them, it's not going to work. So there are going to have to be things that are implemented that provide that. And again, how do we know discernment? Who is giving the people peace and who is taking it away from them? If you're taking away their rights and their freedoms, you're taking away their peace. If you're helping them to become self-sufficient, you're giving them peace in there. We also want to be kind without supporting hate, disruption, and control. And so our actions, again, are going to show us who really cares and who doesn't, who's supporting the hate, disruption, and control, and who's supporting the peace. Big difference in there. We're going to see the past resurfacing. Now, this is going to get pretty interesting as well during this time. So there may be some second chances come around, opportunities to do something that couldn't have been done before. And when we're looking at this, we want to look at who were the people before, who are they now, and what are they trying to be? So as we know, we have a lot of people that are so-called changing sides in things. And that means that we may see some people who were going down one path before. There's questions like with Tulsi Gabbard and people like that, well, you were one of those world WAF young emerging leader kind of people, again, there's claims where she says, well, I didn't even know I was on the list or that. Well, I don't know about all of that, but whether she knew or didn't know or whatever, the question is, who was she before? Who is she now? And, what is she supporting going forward? And we know that people change along the way. We all do, right? Many of us went down one path. How many people went down wanting to support environmental things until we realized all of the other agendas behind it and realized how much scams there were behind it? Doesn't mean that we've stopped wanting the environment to be taken care of. It just means we're not going to fall for the scams anymore. So we may have changed our position on things with the information we learned. And we want to move forward in a way that is honoring the environment, but not a scam motion, not perpetuated laundering schemes and things like that, money laundering schemes. So looking at that, that's going to be very important. Again, that discernment, it's going to come up over and over again, that discernment. We've got to take a look at these things and be willing to see people, again, not just for who they were, but who are they now and what are they trying to become and support positive things. Decisions have to be made during this time about the path forward. And the decisions that are made during this time are going to have a huge impact of what path we go down. So we really want to pay attention to what decisions are being made in our countries, in our areas, among world leaders, because that is really going to determine where are we going to end up? What kind of a future are we going to end up in? It's not going to be the only point in time that we have this come up, but it is going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one. From the 19th through the end of the month, we are going to see steps to help people again meet their needs. So a lot of those price drops that I was talking about in the month, a lot of the lowering of gas prices, things like that, the basic things like because people need gas to get to work. They need food to feed their families. Maybe they don't need all of the excess junk food or things like that, but they need to be able to eat basic things. Eggs, right? Eggs is the big, who would have thought? That's like, who would have thought that toilet paper would become the hottest commodity in the world in 2020? And who would have thought that we'd be arguing over egg prices and seeing egg prices go to these weird extremes, right? The same sort of concept there. I think a lot of the price drops are going to happen in that last week and a half of the month, the 19th on. I think we are going to see those shifts. We could see some of those incentives starting to come out for people. As far as like, we might start to hear more about the new car incentives coming out, making changes like that. So again, this could affect like utility prices, right? Electric pricing. Here in Maine, we are one of the most expensive states. We're not the most expensive, but I think we're like the third most expensive for things like electricity and gas and natural fuel to heat our homes and things like that. So definitely, I think there's going to be some of those kind of costs coming down because again, those are basic needs for people, right? Especially when you look at the senior community, they need to have hot air conditioning and hot weather, and they need to have heat and cold weather. So basic things, those prices have got to come down for them to be able to, again, afford the basics because they're not really getting anything beyond that. And sometimes what they have doesn't cover that. We can also see some illness or narratives about illness trying to surface up during that time as well. This could be partially backlash for bringing the prices and the cost of living down. So we want to be careful of that. When I look at that, I say just take care of your health to start with. The best you can, minimize the junk food, all the basic stuff, get out in the sunshine, get some exercise, walking, whatever it is that you can do for yourself. Keeping your nutrients boosted up in your body, whatever you found to do that is really going to make a difference in here. So if we're staying on top of that, even if diseases start to come up, and one of the big things I know they were trying to push was measles and measles outbreak. Seems like that's got dropped off the radar again. So we may see another one that comes back up during this last part of April. Again, we just want to be careful. We want to be careful because so many of these things, when you go in and you research them, it's like, oh, we have a measles outbreak. And what did I hear on the radio station? I was going out to do some charity work the other day, and on the radio station, they were like, yeah, there's a huge measles outbreak, and only the unvaccinated are getting this. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's not quite true. But, I pretty much imagine if we got into the real facts of that wouldn't be true. But these are the narratives they're going to put out there. People are going to push their perception of things or what they want people to believe. And we can't just take it at face value. We got to take a look, especially with the health stuff. And, I've looked at these things many times where they say, oh, we're starting to have this disease outbreak. And there's literally been not even 10 cases across the entire United States. And were those cases truly that? Some of them maybe not. One or two cases doesn't indicate a health crisis going on. So yes, do we have to pay attention to it? Are they going to probably try to release stuff along the way? I'm sure they are. But that doesn't mean, one, again, that we need to be in the fear of it, because if we're taking proper care of ourselves, our body's going to be able to fight it off. Our body's going to be able to resist things. And two, again, a lot of it is just not what they want us to believe it is. And that's a huge thing. Temptations and materialism. We've got to be very careful of this. So again, we could see some stuff coming out where we got to be very careful where there's things being offered as a sort of reward, Remember in the pandemic back in 2020, and they were doing things like, well, if you go get this thing, uh, take this shot. We'll give you free donuts for a year, or, you'll get free burgers or things like that, all this unhealthy stuff. It was kind of ironic. They're trying to sell you into, yeah, do this for your health, but we'll give you all this unhealthy stuff. I mean, the irony in these narratives and these bribes and these temptations is pretty funny when you look at it, really. Like, it makes no sense at all. So we need to be careful of that. And what they're requiring somebody to give up, in some aspects we could say is literally their soul. So we've got to be extra careful. And that what this tells me is that we might see some pharmaceutical companies pushing certain injections along the way, pushing that. And they may come out and claim, look, we've got this, and hey, we want everybody to go get their booster. We want everybody to go get this, injection. And if you do that, we'll do such and such. And there can literally be this selling of the soul aspect. At minimum, it's going to require us to give something up of value, but we may not even know what we're giving up if we go through with it. Like, how many people who are having side effects from, boosters and shots and things like that? How many people are having side effects from those? It's quite a bit, by the way, that didn't know they would be giving up their health. They didn't know that they were going to give it up if they did that, because they never would have done it, right? And so we have to be careful. If somebody's got to bribe you to do something, if they have to give you incentive and reward to do something, then it probably isn't a good thing to do. That's just the reality of it. It probably isn't a good thing to do. And that's that discernment piece. Oh, are they trying to bribe me into doing this? Why do they need to give me an incentive to do this if it's so good for me? It's because it's not good for you. It's because they've got something else that they're actually doing under the guise of that. And, you shouldn't take advantage of it. So if they're bribing you, there's your discernment. Are they trying to bribe me into something? And especially if they're trying to bribe me with something that's, counter to what they're claiming they're wanting to do, then I'm pretty sure that that's not something I should take advantage of. I'm pretty sure that's going to rob me of something valuable that they're not telling me about. And so just pay attention. Just pay attention. Don't just jump out there and take action, especially if it's, fear-based, which is what happened with a lot of people in 2020. They did stuff based on fear, based on narratives, not checking the facts out, not checking out ingredients on things to find out, what that was about. I'm not saying believe all the truth or stuff, because they've got some lies and they push things too far on that side too. They don't always tell the total truth. You have to get in and actually look at the facts. Okay, thoughts, energy. From the 1st through the 7th, where's the mindset? That's what we're looking at in this energy aspect. So people's thoughts, we have to be very, very careful of mind games, brainwashing, and mind control activity going on. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that in that first week, or attempts of it. So again, we have to hold our guard. We need to not just buy right into things. A lot of these groups that work with ill intentions, these people with ill intentions, are using things like neuro-linguistic programming, things like that, to get you to take action. So I really want you to take the time to research things. Don't just jump into the action on things. Be very careful of this, because this programming runs very deep and very heavy. And this is going to be used to create division. So what we really want to do is stay in observation. Well, let's just sit and observe this for a while. And you know what? If you wait a week to take action on something, you're going to be fine. But it's better to wait a week or two and get past this influence so that you're able to really see everything and then use this influence again to just be in the observation and watch maybe what both sides are saying, watch what's going on, what's going down, what you're being requested of. Look at some of these wordings of things. And a lot of people do this. We see this in marketing and sales all the time, right? Oh, you really want to do this. If you want to look good, you need to do this. You've got to have this. And that programming, which is forcing people into action, it's preying on the fears of being left out of all kinds of things. It's part of why I'm probably not a very good marketer because I don't work with all those manipulation tactics. It's kind of like I'm going to tell you things, and sometimes you're not going to like what I say. But it's going to be the truth. I can, I will give you the truth to the best of my ability to give you the truth. But there's going to be times you don't like what I say, and that's okay, but I'm still going to tell it to you because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to manipulate you. And if I have to manipulate you to take advantage of my services or to go purchase a book, then maybe you're not ready for the work. That's it's a different way of thinking, but yeah, I'm not going to make a ton of money doing that, obviously. But what I've learned is the people that do go forward with things are loyal, are devoted, and they are seeing the results of things. So I would much rather have somebody who's going to be loyal and do the work than to have 5 or 10 people who aren't doing the work out there. So watch those things. We don't want to get into these divisions and arguments among each other again. So we need to know what is our battle and what is somebody else's battle. And a lot of these things, again, we need to just kind of step out of, honestly. I know a lot of people are pushing out there. There's a lot of people in the truther community, a lot of influencer. Well, you have to take this side. Well, you know what? No, I don't. No, I don't. I have one side, and that is with God and divine source. And you know what? That's the one side that I'm going to stand on. So, whoever's standing there, that's who I'm going to be with. And we got corruption on both sides. It doesn't matter. Everybody's justifying their actions and things. So just be careful. Take the time to be in observation, sit back, watch things, say, yeah, I'm not the one that's battling with the pharmaceuticals. I have a choice to take something or not take something. But that battle belongs with other people, and they've got to do that battle. And I will support them maybe in that battle, stand behind them or whatever. But, it's not my battle. And we need to know that people have to resolve their own stuff. These battles between some of these world leaders, again, if you look like Russia, Ukraine, or whatever, or even in the Middle East, Iran, Iraq, and these places, I mean, they're not the people's battles. They're the battles between the elite and the wealthy, because they're the ones that are battling, not us. Okay. We need to stay focused on our own plans, implementing implementing things with minimal to no reliance on others. So again, coming back to how much can I do on my own? Thinking about what pieces can I accomplish? What actions can I take? Thinking about what is possible for me on a personal level. And again, instead of being wrapped up in everybody else's battles, let me move forward with my own stuff and keeping that focus. Now, from the 8th through the 16th, we're going to be learning a lot about those spiritual teachers, false prophets, false ministers, and things like that out there. Remember, I was bringing that up in the monthly stuff. It's big all month, but this is where we're going to see it the strongest, is the second week of April and here. And a lot of these spiritual teachers are going to be used for mind control. So they're going to be doing the new age twisting of things around. And what they're doing is they're taking something that is a so-called pleasant concept, right? Like the secret of money, the secret of the secret, just plain the secret, right? These abundance principles, these different things, and you're going to see these people coming out saying, well, if you really believe in God, you're going to do this. If you really believe in compassion for people, you're going to do this. And so they're going to take and use these people. They're going to twist it. These people are going to use different new age terminology and things, which we're going to have to be careful of. And they're using it for mind control. They're actually being paid again by these corrupt networks, these people with ill intentions, to get people to believe certain things under the premise of a spiritual principle or value. So we're probably going to be seeing a lot of twisting and turning of the spiritual principles and values in there. One of the things that came to mind when I was making the notes was the repeat of the Jim Jones, so like cult leaders. And some of these people they're going to wheel out, that's exactly what they're going to be, is cult leaders. And for those that are younger, you might not know of the Jim Jones incident, but he was a cult leader and he got a bunch of people to drink Kool-Aid, and it was like a massacre. I think they even referred to it at points, Jim Jones massacre, and all these people suicided in the name of his religion and what he told them to believe. So, at some point, do you say, well, was he paid by somebody? Was he authorized by this? Was he MLK Ultra? What in there? MK Ultra in there. Was he operating under some kind of programming or being controlled? And we know this with some of these really big name spiritual leaders out there, that some of them are under MK Ultra programming. Some of them are in there influencing things. And they could just be activated during this time. So again, we have to be very, very careful when these spiritual groups, religious groups, anything are jumping on the political bandwagon. They've stepped away from their belief system, because if you look at the core of most of the spiritual practices, they are not political. You look at things in the Bible, you look at the religious things, they say, do not get political in there. Stay with God, stay with source, stay with Jesus, whatever your religion is. Doesn't say stay with world leaders. It doesn't say get involved in political battles. And there's a lot of religions justifying it out there. So just be really, really careful of this. And this is going to involve, again, a lot of big name gurus are going to be brought to the surface. So I think the second week is going to be the biggest time of the month that we're going to be seeing that. And it was funny because right after I started to make the notes on that, I saw this death accident and repeating the past. So I thought, oh, that's ironic that I came up with Jim Jones out of everybody on these spiritual gurus, false prophet kind of people, repeating the past aspect in there. And what we're going to find in this death accident, repeating the past energy, is connections to those also maybe that have been passed on. And so that could include more stuff coming out on JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, people like this. We're going to see a spotlight being shed during this week on accidental deaths. And that's probably going to bring up the Clintons. That could bring up ties into the Obamas. That could bring up a lot of different connections in that area. I think that, we could also see other things, what could there be connections somehow with similar events going on to things like the Twin Towers in New York. We know that wasn't a natural happening. There could be stuff coming out like that. Specifically coordinated to the past for the month of April, though. The things that come up around there are connected to flights that have weather issues going on. So remember, I already talked about the storms and stuff that could be coming through. So we could see a repeat of flights having weather issues. And I think in the past, we've actually had some where flights not only just had to ground in different places, but we literally had planes so-called disappearing, whole planes full of people disappearing. That could then trigger open some of the UFO stuff, because the death and the accident energy also connects with paranormal activity energy. So that might be another thing that surfaces in there. The Titanic is the past, is part of the past that connects with this time. The sinking of the Titanic, going on with that. And remember, that connects in with connections and elite and wealthy and all kinds of stuff there. We also know, so a lot of these things were sabotaged or orchestrated. When we talk about this, World War One started. Apollo 13 launched during this time frame. The Civil War started during this time. What else did we have in here? I thought I had something else, like a Revolutionary War or something like that, starting up under this time period as well. And then, yeah, the American Revolution, which was connected to the shot heard around the world. So if you're in that truther community, I know there were things connected to that in certain posts about the shot heard around the world revolution. And so there very easily could be this battle energy. Now, people that follow astrology, they would be looking at this saying, okay, maybe I don't know a lot about codes, but I sure know, in astrology that Aries is connected to Mars, and Mars is a fighting energy, and this sort of thing. So I think there may be more connections coming up, but I think those are the types of things. And again, that also connects in with this programming to divide people and to get them into this division, hating each other again. So we have to really, really stay on top of that. And then what we have also from the 17th through the end of the month, so the last half basically of April, in that thought area, is we're going to see more of a focus on team efforts. So what we could see coming up in order to deal with some of these maybe attempts at wars to break out or things like that, because we know Trump talks a lot about peace, right? So what would the ill intention do to sabotage him? Try to start wars, within the country, things like that. So yeah, it all makes sense. But in these last couple of weeks here, what we're going to find is this interagency coordination going on. And that's, I think that's going to be interesting to see, because I don't think we've had that. We've had that in little pieces that actually connected back to some of the things with like RFK and JFK and Martin Luther King and, some of these other assassination pieces that have gone on along the way, is we've seen where agencies coordinated with each other. And I think at this time we will see agencies coordinating with each other to stop this stuff, to really prevent dangerous things from happening. And that's going to be interesting again to watch in that. Also engaging different perspectives and looking at valid points on each side. So again, this is that balance and that harmony piece. This is one of the ways we do it. We say, well, what are the important points this side is making? What are the important points this side is making? And looking at both of those and saying, yeah, okay, both sides have some valid points here that we need to consider. And maybe it's not about choosing one side or the other. It's about choosing the valid points and going from there. So, ultimately we have to find ways to get things done, which means, again, we're going to have to give a little bit on both sides to come into that balance and in harmony so that we can get things done. And of course, the ill intention, the corruption, whatever you want to say, their goal is to block things from getting done in there. So again, even in that last couple of weeks, I think we're going to see a lot of info coming out from RFK Jr., where he's working with all the health initiatives. I think he's going to come into the spotlight in the last 2 weeks of the month, and we're going to hear about a lot of things with him removing. What can we do to remove EMFs or to minimize the damage from EMFs, initiatives supporting time off, healing, outdoor activities. things like that. So I think he's going to be in the spotlight with a lot of health initiatives. He's already working on different things with getting cell phones out of kids' hands when they're in school, because they need to focus on school, they need to focus on learning, um, all of these things, and they're proving that the health damages, the mental health damages that are coming from the phone being constantly in the hand. So I think we're going to see a lot coming up from him in the last part of the month. And then the soul energy. And, of course, people always say, why do you deal with the soul energy and geopolitical stuff? And it's like, because the soul energy is our spirit. That's the feelings that people are having. That's the state of mind, in a sense, the ability to hold a sense of spirit or interconnection or connection to God, divine presence, or anything else in the world among events that are happening in the world. So, basically what's going to make or break uh, our spirit along the way. And during this part of the month, and I think this is kind of all through the month, but it's especially in the first through the 13th of the month, so the first couple of weeks, we are going to see attempts to break the spirits. This is part of that breaking people down. If we can break them down, then we can pull them into war. We can pull them into division. We can, pull them into illness. We can pull them into all kinds of things. We can get them to give up. We can, so this breaking down of spirit is all about causing hopelessness. They want people to believe that things are hopeless. They want to believe that they're not going to change. They want them to believe that, there's no way things are going to get better. So we got to be careful of that. That's going to be a lie that we don't want to buy into. We're going to see more cutting off of freeloaders. So definitely expect, whether we're talking Doge or whoever, is going to be clearing out a lot more and cutting these freeloaders off. You don't need to be paying Social Security to people who aren't alive anymore. Okay, that's part of people freeloading on the system. Again, pulling the people off, like, I can't physically do things that work a regular job, but I also am not eligible for disability. And what's frustrating with different things for me is when I look at people around, of these people who aren't even disabled, they can go out and get a job. They're physically capable of doing things, they just don't want to, and they're living off the system. So I think we're going to, again, see a lot of the fraud in the systems cut away from things, and that's going to be cut down more and more. So that's going to be a big thing to watch. Opportunities to earn assistance, I think, are going to arise. And I think what's going to be happening more and more, we have similar things in Maine, but they're not reasonable. So, for example, part of the SNAP program, which is food assistance program, is you can get SNAP benefits, but you have to work 20 hours a week. Now, how reasonable is that? If you're already working a full-time job and you still need assistance, which people in a lot of the service jobs and stuff like that, they do. They're not making that much money by the time they pay their rent and everything else, or pay for their kids and all this other stuff, or they need help because they have kids or things like that. And then they're expected to go work 20 hours a week for that food assistance. So somebody like me who can't work a job to start with and yet isn't eligible for disability, and I'm already working, technically the amount of hours I put in self-employment is huge, 60 hours or whatever a week. And I'm expected to go work another 20 hours a week for food, which makes for food stamps. I'm not against exchanges, but the exchanges have to be reasonable. I mean, when you reasonably budget things, if you were talking to a budget person or a financial person, what would they say? They would say your rent should not be more than 1/3 of your intake. So, even if you look at things like senior housing, right? They take 1/3 of what you bring in. So if you bring in $1,500 a month, then they take $500 a month for it. But with the SNAP program, for example, they want you to work 20 hours a week. Well, that's equivalent. If you were bringing in $1,500 a month on a full-time job, I mean, that's equivalent to, at least $750 a month, but they're not giving you that. It's a slave system. Ultimately, that's what it is. So we have to be careful of these things. And this is where I think we're going to see some restructuring coming around, particularly in this early part of April, in some of these programs to say, yeah, okay, let's get assistance to people, but it's got to be reasonable because again, most people, they don't have 20 hours a week to go put in places unless they are retired or a senior, they're on, Social Security or some of these things, and they don't have anything else to do. Well, yes, they have 20 hours a week to give, maybe, but a lot of people don't. So I think we need to create some exchanges. I think that needs to be fair somehow, but it's got to be improved. It can't be the way it is. It's just not working. It's not helping the people again who need it out there. And you've got people out there working, 60, 80 hours a week, and you want them to go work another 20 for food assistance. I mean, it doesn't add up. So we need to be practical. We need to be responsible, and we've got to remove the slave systems. And I think that is part of what's happening is we can remove these so-called slave systems if we cut the freeloaders off the system in there. So paying attention to that. And again, our biggest responsibility comes back to God, divine source, not people. And this is a big reminder in the codes. Your alliance is to whatever terminology you use for that, God or divine source. It's not to people. Earth is going to take care of itself one way or another, with or without humans, with or without technology. It's going to take care of itself. Okay. So we really only have one alliance that we need to stay focused on, and that should be our biggest responsibility, creating peace and holding that alliance to God, divine source. And then stick to what is best for us. We can't be letting people influence us. When we let people influence us, we're going to get our spirit broken. It's going to impact the soul process in there. So, hey, that's it. That's it for this week. Watch out for those false prophets who are really paid activists out there. Be alert to that and have some patience because, things that are being implemented are going to take time to implement. There's so many people that are like, why haven't, my cost of living come down by $500 a month or whatever? It takes time for things to go through the cycles for it to actually hit the average person. It is coming. It will be happening, but we've got to have some patience. We can't just be rushing and pushing things, because if we rush things and push things too hard and too much, there's going to be mistakes and we're going to end up with bigger problems. It's best to just get it done right the first time, as they say, and stay with that instead of, getting in this frenzy that it's gotta happen, 2 months ago. And not everything can be done all at once. I mean, we've seen a lot of change when you start to look at it, when you look at all the things that have been implemented, all the things that are being put in place, and we will see the results of those efforts coming around. And yes, there are going to be some scary points, and there are going to be some times where things may not look like they're, what we want all the time, but they are coming around as they get through the whole process. And that's the thing. They've got to go through the whole process, right? You don't just wake up and say, I want my fridge filled. So when I wake up tomorrow morning, it's going to be totally filled with all this wonderful, beautiful, healthy food that is the most amazing food in the world, right? It's all going to be healthy, organic, whatever. Pure food in there, pure food. So, you don't wake up and it's just filled for you. There's a whole process that it's got to go through. That's got to get to the, even once you make these, orders and stuff like that, and you get these things put through and these regulations or whatever, you get this stuff put through and the regulations released and everything. It takes time for the shift to go through and that shift to be made, and then for that shift to hit the market, and then that shift to hit your home. We got to be patient. And I know it's going to be hard for people in this month, but we got to do it. So with that, I just appreciate you hanging in there with me, listening to what's going on. Take the wisdom, use it, have some foresight, come back, listen to the video along the way. And, if you have some thoughts about things, if you have some questions, go ahead and put them in the comments down there. Like the video, share it out with people, because it is really fun. I always have fun when I see things coming up and I've done one of these videos, and then a week or two later, it's like, yep, talked about that in the video. Yep, talked about that in the video. Yep, said that was going to happen. And it is fun to kind of see it come around and to see exactly how it does manifest in things. And until next month, take care, everybody. Jump over to my website, compassioncodes.com. Don't forget to pick up your copy so you can stay on top of it yourself, of what's happening, what's coming down, what the influences are like of the code journey. And that, again, is on the goods tab on the website, and you'll see the code journey. Click on that and you'll find the year there. The links will get you directly to the current copy. And I expect the 2026 copy to be released in a few months, not until mid-August. We're only finishing out March. I've got to finish writing, and I'm doing a lot of push. But also, if you want to watch for areas to catch up with me, I'm going to be speaking with the Dowsers group late May in New York, outside of the Saratoga Springs area. And then I will be over in Vermont, in Rutland, Vermont, 4 times this summer and fall, starting late May. And there will be another event coming up in July. I'm still solidifying everything exactly with topics and what the presentations are. I'll also be doing personal appointments during those times. So there will be a late May date. I think it's the last weekend in maybe the last weekend and not in May, and then one in July, around mid-July, and then I think it's I think it's September sometime, and then October, maybe early September, late October kind of time frame. So look for those dates. They're also on my website. You can find them over there in the events happening section, and I'll be adding to that. You can also sign up for my newsletter if you'd like to stay on top of everything. So take care, and I will see you next month.